Greetings, everyone. Well, I'm here for the review of Star Wars Thrawn, Treason. This is the third book in the new Thrawn trilogy, the new canon trilogy, and I loved this book. I absolutely loved it. Everything that I loved about the first one comes back in this one. The pacing, the way the story progresses, the way that the mysteries are revealed, the way that all of that goes. It was a very satisfying book. Some things about it. The political aspect of the book returns, meaning that how the Imperial higher ups are regarding Thrawn and his work. All of that sort of comes back into play. The book is set before the Rebels season finale. So, if you're watching Star Wars Rebels at all, season 3, and then you've got season 4. This is right before the very ending of season 4. And it's not that there's tie-ins, but it's not that the book is dependent upon the TV series or vice versa. It is its own standalone story. So you don't have to feel like you're missing out one or the other if you only get to one of them, but not like if you only read the book but not the series, you're not really missing out. And if you only see the series but not the book, again, you're not missing anything major. But they do reference each other, and I like that. So this returns kind of to the idea of the Project Stardust versus Thrawn's TIE Defender project. So that tension comes back into play. Because, see, not everyone accepts Project Stardust, as we will see. Grand Moff Tarkin, of course, still does. Of course, Director Krennic, he does. Both of those characters return for a supporting role. Well, I don't remember if Krennic was in the other one, but Krennic shows up, and Grand Moff Tarkin returns as a supporting role for this book. Probably the big thing is that some Imperial officers feel that Project Stardust, as awe-inspiring as it is almost insurmountably expensive. And of course, if you remember that at the end of Revenge of the Sith is when we're already starting to see the Death Star in play, that means that it takes pretty much 19, probably 20 years for the whole project to be finished. And then it's only finished for like one day before it all gets blown up. But it's an extremely expensive project, beyond expensive. I don't even want to know what it does to the Imperial citizenry as far as taxes and such like that go. But it's a lot of resources centralized into one location, and some don't think that's a good idea. And not to say that everyone is thrilled with the TIE Defender aspect as well, because those are expensive too. So there's these two projects going side by side, and there's kind of this competition between the two, right? So Director Krennic shows up along with his new self-righteous wrench in the cog assistant, Director Ronan. This is the guy that I really just wished I could punch in the face, you know? Mainly because of how self-righteous he is and how much he's just on Thrawn's case. I mean, really, his main idea is that Krennic doesn't want Thrawn to, okay, I guess I got to say what's going on here. So there's this problem here. Okay, there's these secret supply runs that are supposed to be sending resources to where the Death Star is being built, Project Stardust. But there's these oversized, I think they're called Gralix, if I remember. These oversized creatures, they're like 3 times the size of a Minoc. Okay, remember the Minocs that were chewing on the Millennium Falcon in the asteroid field in Empire Strikes Back? It's basically their larger cousin. But it's the same idea. They feed on electricity. And what would happen is that these Gralix would show up, latch onto a ship that had these supplies that would be going to Project Stardust. It would chew on their cables and stuff, and it would accidentally activate their hyperdrive, and they'd get shot off into who knows where. And either crash into something, fly into a star, or bounce too close to the edge of a supernova, and it would end their trip real quick, you know? So there's this problem here, and they're too fast, they're too maneuverable to really shoot down with turbo lasers. Ion cannons don't do anything to them. So they've got this problem here. And Thrawn is brought in to see if he can figure out how to deal with it, if he has some weird strategic way of figuring it out. So it's a near impossible task, and everybody knows it, but they kind of see if Thrawn will accept it. He's got 1 week to figure out to get rid of the Gralic problem, and he accepts it. But Assistant Director Ronan is sent to tag along to basically try to not necessarily sabotage Thrawn's efforts, but Krennic wants his Stardust project funded. Oh, that's the thing, is that if Thrawn figures it out, then the funding will go to the TIE Defender project. But if he can't figure it out, then the funding will be fully diverted into Project Stardust. And so Krennic wants to make sure that the problem gets solved so that, the Death Star can get finished, but not too soon, so that way he can get all the money. Okay? So it's all this power play, this political play here. So the book goes off on quite a bit of a rabbit trail that leads eventually into something much more sinister from on high. And so the book takes a few different paths to get onto, because I'm going through and I'm like halfway through the book and I was like, okay, I see the problem. We still got a whole half through of this book. What's going to happen until then? So I call it a rabbit trail because it goes on to a few different ideas here. Now, the Chiss, the Chiss Ascendancy makes a formal appearance in Admiral Ar'alani, I think it is, or Ar'aliani. Let me see if I can find her name in here. That's one of the other characters. Oh, here come. Ar'alani. Admiral Ar'alani from the Chiss Defense Force, Chiss Fleet. They make a formal appearance along with the return of Eli Vanto, who is the commander, the Imperial officer who sort of helped Thrawn get his start and was sort of his liaison / language, cultural liaison expert. Because remember, at the end of the first book, Thrawn sent him off to join the Chiss Ascendancy. He had a job for him to do, and he thought that he would be of use to the Chiss, but we didn't know what for. We knew that Eli was good at numbers and figures and stuff like that, but we didn't know what he was doing. And so Eli Vanto is shown as returning in this book. Now, Vanto is seen by a deserter / traitor by the Imperials, because they said all they know that all of a sudden he just disappeared and they didn't know what it was. And they didn't like him already because of his attachment to Thrawn. And so they, he's kind of like, he's also sort of an outsider. Vanto was just supposed to have sort of this little supply running track or whatever and not really be an officer. He certainly wasn't slated to be in strategy. And so both Vanto and Thrawn end up being these sort of outsider upstarts that sort of make their way up the system of sorts. Vanto not as much. He kind of keeps getting not very fair treatment in the first book. But that sort of carries over to this one. He's seen as a traitor, as a deserter by the Imperials. Vanto, he's diligent in his duties in the Chiss Ascendancy, but he doesn't realize the full potential of his number crunching. You know that Thrawn doesn't do anything lightly, so he doesn't just ship him off and say, you might be useful. Who knows? Thrawn never does anything half-heartedly, and he never does anything randomly or by guessing. Well, okay. He makes calculated risks sometimes, but he never really guesses at things. So Vanto doesn't really know why he's doing what he's doing. He's demoted to a lieutenant now in the Chiss hierarchy. So he's there, but he doesn't really know why. He's trying to do his best. He's honoring his commitment to Thrawn by helping the Chiss Ascendancy. but his full purpose has yet to be discovered. Now, the Chiss have a great secret, this unspeakable secret about their well, I don't know if it's an unspeakable secret, but nobody else knew about it, regarding the navigational skills of their crew. There's something that's really unique about them, and it's their trade secret. It's their trade secret that other factions don't know about. The return of the Grisks, as seen from Thrawn alliances. Vader and Thrawn had to deal with those folks back in the second book. And so we really get to see them, they're really more fleshed out as to their strategies, kind of their purpose, how they do things. And really, they're quite a formidable threat. I mean, Thrawn, remember that Thrawn said that he offered his services to the Empire. You could say to kind of get the galaxy ready or prepared for threats to come from the unknown regions. The Chiss Ascendancy had their own problems, and it didn't sound like they were handling it. It didn't sound like it was easy to handle. It sounded like there was quite some cost to them. And so the Grisks represent one of these threats to the Chiss Ascendancy in the unknown regions of the galaxy. And it's really disturbing how the Grisks fight. They don't really even fight by themselves. They don't have a Grisk army, but they fight almost purely by proxy, meaning that someone else does their fighting for them. They're mind manipulators. They can convert virtually anyone to fight for them. I want to share for you this little brief passage here. So this is with Eli. They're on the Chiss ship called the Steadfast, and he's speaking to this navigator, one of the navigators that's there on the ship. So Vanya is the name of one name of the navigator that we're following here. Vanya took a deep breath and let it out in a soft sigh. I've touched the mind of Un-He, which is another one of the Chiss navigators that they're dealing with. I've seen what the Grisks did to her, how they probed deeply into her mind and soul, how they found her deepest desires and fears, her most comforting memories and her most cherished hopes, how they twisted and tarnished and bent all of them to their will. And Eli says, how they broke her soul. Well, and actually, no, I think Vanya still says that. She paused. Eli remained silent, wishing that he had something of comfort to say, knowing that he didn't. They're a terrible enemy, Eli, Vanya said. Your empire, your former empire, forces its will on its slaves through soldiers and weapons and warships. But the Grisks? 300 can command a nation. 100 can rule an entire world. Billions of beings, their hearts and souls broken, ready to fight and die at the order of a handful of aliens. No resistance, no revolt, no dissent, no hope. That's messed up. That is really messed up. The idea that you have these few people who know how to get into the minds of those, not even to say that they're weak-minded, but this small group, this small elite group of mind manipulators are able to get into the minds of these people who they conquer, and they're able to twist them into fighting for them, into dying for them, into carrying out dastardly plans for them. Sounds like politicians to me. So, Thrawn's allegiance to the Empire is continued to be questioned by Imperial fanatics. Some of the ones that I mentioned before, like Ronan, Assistant Director Ronan. He strikes me as kind of a fanatic, Not that he has any love for the Emperor necessarily, but that he has complete devotion to Director Krennic and the Death Star project. But yeah, Thrawn's allegiance to the Empire has continued to be questioned by Imperial fanatics. Thrawn's assistance to the Chiss is deemed traitorous, while Thrawn remains that he is proactively protecting the Empire from the dangers of the unknown regions. And some will even have a hard time buying that idea, but that's what Thrawn maintains, is that there's these dangers out here that need to be taken care of. And if he can assist the Chiss as they go, then he will do that. Eventually, even the Emperor questions Thrawn's loyalty and decides to have a chat with him. Have a chat. That's my Boba Fett reference. They decide to have a chat with him after Thrawn defeats the Lothal rebels. But of course, he didn't defeat the Lothal rebels, and so that conversation was never had. That tells you how close that this book ties into Rebels, the final episodes of Rebels. So, yeah, that's what I mean. The epilogue ties into the finale of Rebels there. But again, I love everything that I loved in the first book of Thrawn, I loved in Thrawn Treason. It was just, I love it here. Now, the Emperor's on the cover here, but he doesn't really make much of an appearance, just at the end and maybe a little bit at the beginning. So, I'm not entirely sure why he's on there. Except to say that the Emperor has his attention on Thrawn. So, the thing I love about the mastery of Thrawn's tactics, his improvisation, his cultural, artistic analysis, it's so satisfying to see it all play out. And it happens once. I do remember that there is a whole lot of artistic analysis done in the early Legends Thrawn books, and it makes an appearance in Rebels, and it makes an appearance in this book and in the first Thrawn book, but it's not such a strong point. It's more like it's mentioned, and we kind of know that it's a skill of his, at least those of us who have already been reading him and know about him, but it doesn't make a huge thing until towards the end, and that's when it really. Again, you get towards the end and everything's sort of laid out again, and it's just so satisfying to see everything really laid out. Now, being so near to Rebels finale, where Thrawn is taken by Ezra to somewhere unknown that we don't know about, it's curious to think of how Thrawn would have probably prevented the Death Star's destruction. Even though he didn't care for the Death Star, he thought that it was not a wise use of Imperial resources, and that it wasn't tactically, it wasn't tactically a wise idea to have something so large and centralized. But I'm sure that if Thrawn hadn't been carried off by Ezra in the Purrgil at the end of Rebels, that Thrawn would have kept the Death Star, kept the Death Star alive. I'm sure of it. So it'd be interesting to think about how that could have played out. Knowing now, also outside of the book, knowing that Lars Mikkelsen, if I'm saying his name right, I don't know, he's the guy who voices Thrawn in Rebels. Knowing that he is slated to portray Thrawn in a live action Ahsoka series, and maybe even in other series, I'm interested to see what happened to him and Ezra, because I wanted to know, how does this all tie in to what's going on? Because you've got Rebels references in here, and it's like, okay, everything's kind of got to fit around that and not really interfere with that, because these books were written after Rebels, I think. They were written after Rebels, because that's been out for several years now, and this last one here was published, was it 19 or was it 20? Hang on here. 2019. 2019 is when that one was. Oh, here's a neat little thing here. Here's the bottom of Thrawn's Star Destroyer, the Chimera. So that's interesting. So, yes, I'm really interested to see what happens with him, because seeing that seeing that Thrawn essentially was using the Empire to proactively help his people, his own people, the Chiss, now that the Empire is in shambles in this New Republic era, because remember, Ahsoka was looking for him after she defeated Morgan someone, I forget what her name was, who was kind of sort of the lord of that settlement on the planet where Ahsoka was at. I'm forgetting all their names though. Now that he is apparently back from wherever he was taken, we don't know how, if Ezra survived or how Thrawn got back. It's interesting to see the state of the Chiss ascendancy, for one thing, because really Thrawn was with the Empire not because he necessarily believed in the Empire, but he saw that they were the dominant force, and that he, again, was proactively trying to protect the Chiss ascendancy by understanding, first of all, really understanding and researching the Galactic Empire. Joining it was just sort of a fortunate happenstance, if you will. It seemed advantageous, and so that's what he does. But really, his first allegiance is with the Chiss ascendancy. So I'm really interested to see how that is going on, because while the Galactic Civil War has been going on, we don't know. I don't think we know anything about what's going on with the Chiss or the unknown regions of space. And so I'm curious as to what his motives are going to be now in this new series, the Ahsoka series. Having read this wants to make me rewatch Rebels again, to see if there's any tie-in or anything that I can glean that comes into this. I mean, I don't think there's much aside from really name dropping or just sort of setting timing of that. But I really want to watch Rebels again. So I might do that. And I hope you do too, because it's a really enjoyable series. So, I loved this. I love this book. 5 out of 5. I love it. The second one, I would have given maybe a 4 out of 5, just because the pacing was different, how the mystery was solved. It was more like the second one was more like you figure it out as you go, but you don't really get the feeling that Thrawn has like the absolute control, but it's more like he's in this situation, and he and Anakin, and then he and Vader have to sort of figure things out as they go. So it's good sleuthing, but I just love to see the dominoes fall in this one. It's really satisfying. So I love this book. I hope you get it. I hope you read it, because I think that you'll enjoy it too. So thanks for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.